Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Best Practices for Online Security webinar. We're thrilled to have you join us today as part of University of Cincinnati's programming for Cybersecurity Awareness Month. This event is brought to you by the Office of Information Security, and I'm very happy to introduce our two knowledgeable presenters from TechGuard. We have Nicole Shade, who's Director of Strategic Solutions, who brings over 8 years of technology experience to the table with 3 years at TechGuard. Nicole specializes in building trusted relationships and aligning effective cybersecurity solutions that reduce risk. And Adam Voss, who's Tech Team Functional Lead, has been with TechGuard for 3 years and has several more years of experience in IT security. Adam is a certified CMMC registered practitioner who specializes in penetration testing and vulnerability scanning. Today's session will last about 30 minutes, followed by a 15-minute Q&A. So feel free to throw your questions in the chat or use the hand raise feature, and we will unmute you to ask your question. So with that, we'll dive right in. Nicole and Adam, I'll hand it over to you.
Great. Thank you, Mary Lou. So in honor of Cybersecurity Awareness Month, we're happy to be your preferred choice as your cyber expert today. The information we're going to present will help protect you, your university, colleagues, and students. The cybersecurity world is forever changing, and this makes being educated on the latest trends in cyber threats more valuable. So we'd like to start this presentation with offering some statistics around higher education, followed by the tips and necessary measures to take to keep your cyber environment safe. So let's start by talking about the facts. 74% of ransom attacks on higher education institutions succeed. Average remediation cost for these incidents is $1.42 million. We typically see this price double depending on the amount of times a network needs to be rebuilt. 41% of higher education cyber incidents are caused by social engineering. So this could be a fake LinkedIn or social media account, someone posing as an admin through email, and sometimes even a fake phone call. The FBI Cyber Division recently warned that ransomware poses a considerable risk for higher education, as cyber criminals using this type of attack are now focusing heavily on colleges and universities, targeting students and faculty.
Yeah, so today we are going to be talking about a lot of different areas about these statistics, how ransomware attacks may spread, and different ways that we can potentially mitigate these problems as well. There's a large focus, as always, in social engineering and phishing exercises as initial footholds. This will also then lead to attackers trying to discover some type of software vulnerabilities. Where we can also see them move laterally, gain access to sensitive information, and exploit weak passwords. So we're going to go through the statistics of it, and then also how we could maybe thwart them as well too.
All right, so now that we know a little bit of statistics, let's talk about how we can prevent you from becoming a statistic. So today, the topics we're going to be covering are multi-factor authentication, password management, keeping your software up to date, recognizing phishing emails, and just a little bit on AI tools. So let's start with multi-factor authentication. It's important to always enable multi-factor authentication, also known as two-factor authentication, two-step verification, or MFA. This will include maybe adding an extra PIN, so a personal identification number, an extra security question like what's your favorite pet's name, an additional code either sent to you through email or text, a biometric identifier like facial recognition or fingerprints. I feel like we all know about those from our cell phones nowadays. A unique number generated by an authenticator app, or a security token, which is a separate piece of hardware, kind of like a key fob, and that verifies a person's identity with a database or a system.
So a lot of us know the ins and outs of multi-factor authentication, I'm sure, but one thing that I think is always hard to hit at home is the users with which we're pushing multi-factor authentication out to. I know from experience with working with clients in higher ed and enterprise and small medium business, we're always fighting the ever, going battle of the accessibility and security, right? Users never want to have the inconvenience of, oh, I just want to log into this app. I don't want to have to pull out my phone to get a password or an extra set of numbers, because what if I don't have my phone on me? But the numbers are very clear on why it is important for multi-factor to exist. Looking at statistics that come from like Microsoft and Google, MFA can be something that can block up, upwards of 80+% of attacks. Users have their passwords compromised quite a bit, and adding a layer of security for something that has to be moment in time access to help prevent attackers from logging in is very, very important to have, either in your education area or just in your organizations in general. In 2023, CISA reported that a ransomware attack on healthcare providers was caused because multi-factor authentication controls weren't properly put in place. As something as simple as, like a token could be the difference between one of these big payouts that you see too. There's also been ransomware attacks in higher ed that were able to get access to MOVEit file transfer systems as well too, that were able to exploit vulnerabilities. But if something as simple as two-factor was enabled, it would have either slowed down or flagged the security team that there was anonymous bad activity going on their network that was an anomaly that shouldn't have been there. So this is often one of the best ways for like the first measure of security to stop attackers from using user error as their foothold in a network.
Next, let's talk a little bit about password management. So don't take a pass on password managers. Password managers not only let you manage hundreds of unique passwords for your online accounts, but some of the services also offer other advantages as well. So it could save you time. Usually they work across all your devices and operating systems. They protect your identity and notify you of potential phishing websites. Also, no matter the account, all passwords should be created with these 3 words in mind: long, unique, and complex. So long, at least 12 characteristics. Make sure it's unique. Never use or reuse passwords. Each account needs its own unique password. Make sure it's complex. Use a combination of upper, lowercase letters, numbers, and special characteristics. Some websites will even let you include spaces.
So password managers are always a fun topic to explore, especially with IT and security professionals, because there is the belief always there that, why would I have a single point of failure? And network security, we don't do that. And, creating like user groups, like we would never have a single area where we would, store the keys to all of the castle. But it's actually one of your greatest defenses for your organization for a number of different reasons. And I'm just going to highlight a couple because I'm sure there will probably be some questions in this area about, what password manager tool would you recommend? Why that one? We don't want to have single point of failure. But when you look at like just basic user activity as a whole, 62% of all people reuse the same password. So, when you're coming up with your original password for your password manager tool, you want to make sure that obviously this is going to be a password that you have never used before and you will never use again. You want to make it something that you wouldn't answer questions on Facebook about when you're trying to do, a fun little about me thing, or something that wouldn't be in like photos or real personal to you, because you want to make sure that if somebody were to look up your digital footprint, they can't really tie back whatever this would be to you. So it needs to be truly unique. The reason for that being is password manager tools are really good at developing passwords for you. You can often put parameters in there for, what do you need it to be? It has to be 12 characters long, right? It needs to be unique. It has to be complex. So we need some special characters in there, some numbers, and it'll make sure that those passwords don't get reused, because 81% of all people have some type of password out there in the wild. So say, and this has happened to me before, when I was at school, we used a system for one of my business classes, and I personally had a password that, I had used. I was much younger, so I wasn't as like pervy to this as I should have been. That got popped, and it was then used to try to like be populated through like other areas. Now, luckily, by the time this had happened, I had moved over to a password tool, and I was able to see in like my accounts that like false passwords were being used before. But I would have never thought that something from 5-6 years ago could have been something that could have caused harm to, say, like bank accounts or things like that as well. The other thing too, and I say this one with a grain of salt, because obviously the statistic is going to be coming from password management software themselves, but statistically shows that you are probably 60% less likely to have a security incident, for the reason I just laid out before. When you're signing up for, getting like 15% off at like your favorite store, or to get a discount during holiday seasons, and you're trying to get a part of these programs, you can create unique passwords where if that organization or wherever the passwords are being stored get popped, you can, one, easily go in and change it, and two, know, oh, well, I don't have to worry about that because I know that I created a one-time unique password, instead of using the same one over there too, or same one over and over again too. So having the safety net of knowing that I didn't use this password anywhere else, it was shown. Oftentimes, password managers can also incorporate multi-factor for you as well too. So it gets rid of the issue of like, well, I have all these things stored in different areas, and it makes it hard for me to log in all the time, can be erased. So we're big believers of the importance of password manager tools and also the security around them as well, which, like I said, I'm sure is something we can talk about later.
Great. Let's switch over to updating software. So software updates fix general problems and provide new security patches where criminals might get in. When downloading a software update, only get it from the company that created it. Hacked, pirated, and unlicensed software versions often contain malware and cause more problems than they solve. Always make sure to turn on your automatic updates.
Yeah, so software updates are a fun one. I would say more times than not, your software updates are going to be the secondary issue to the initial one. And what I mean by that is, once attackers gain a foothold in networks, we often say that, like, the external is like the shell of a turtle, right? It's very hard. It can protect you against a lot of attacks. But once you get past the shell, you have a soft, mushy inside. And that's where a lot of software vulnerabilities exist. When looking at like reports from IBM and Verizon, last year they reported that over 62% of incidents in 2022 were caused by vulnerabilities that already were known or patchable. So this is basically saying like once an attacker got in, they were able to further exploit from say like a lower user level or an area that maybe didn't have as much sensitive data to areas that do. And it's because of patching, which I know from experience is a very daunting thing to get your hands around, because it's literally every day, or it could be every hour there are new patches. But there are some like real critical ones that can really lead to bad days for all of us. The other one is Verizon also reported that 43% of all incidents started with software vulnerabilities, and NIST, which is one of the bigger frameworks that we all use in the public sector as well as like the government side, also warns all users and administrators and businesses that software vulnerabilities are one of the easiest things that you can relatively patch that can help mitigate and thwart threats. Some examples of these things, years ago would have been like Eternal Blue, or, and this one will kind of contradict a little bit of what I just said about like the shell being hardened on the outside. But last year, everybody knows about Log4j, which was discovered and caused quite a bit of concern for users. So.
Let's switch over to phishing. This is always a big topic and a huge concern. So see it so you don't click it, right? So here's some quick tips on how to clearly spot fake phishing emails. Maybe it contains an offer that's too good to be true. If Mary Luce and Tamara send you an email that says you won $1,000, it's probably not true. Language that's urgent, alarming, or threatening. Poorly crafted writing with misspellings and bad grammar, greetings that are ambiguous or just very generic, requests to send personal information, never send personal information, address, phone number, obviously social security number, urgency to click on an unfamiliar hyperlink or attachment, strange or abrupt business requests, and the sending email address does not match the company it's coming from.
So phishing is one that I probably am not going to harp too hard on here, because I think we all know the dangers of it. We probably hear multiple times a year, like phishing is still the largest attack vector. It's the most effective way to get initial access. And, without going too far down the rabbit hole, the facts are that is still true. I mean, today in TechGuard on our engagements, it's still the most likely way that we would get our initial access, especially because with engagements, you're always working against the clock. So we're not going to be able to create like 0 days. But, like Nicole said, some things are too good to be true. And I think a lot of people would be amazed at how many people would click on an email for free coffee from their HR representatives, which, for a long time we had a great deal of success with. So while I'm sure it's redundant to a lot of people in here and just in general, overall, it is still the best way to start incidents.
Yeah, so let's just take it one step further. So obviously, if you suspect that there is some sort of phishing email or somebody's phishing for your information, it's best to report it quickly to your IT manager or security officer. Even with personal emails, some email platforms actually let you report phishing attempts as well. So I feel like we're, getting more up to date with things on that. But always, if you're unsure, report it. Take a screenshot of it. Don't send it to somebody, and just ask if it's legit. Lastly, we're just going to really quick touch on AI tools. Obviously, this is a fairly new topic, so there's not a ton of facts or statistics out there about it, but I think it is something that's important that if we see it in front of the curve, we can prevent things from happening. So just in general of using an AI tool securely, always check with your organization before downloading or using an AI tool. Be on the alert for fake AI apps. Obviously, don't enter protected or personal information in there as well. And don't rely on the answer's accuracy. It may be biased. Don't use it to write code. There could have errors. And then always think before clicking links or opening attachments in emails. We kind of sped through that a little bit quickly, but I think now it's time for question and answer, so we can kind of turn this back over to Mary Luce and Tamara.
Right. Thank you. There we go. Thank you
There
so
you are.
Apologies for that. Really appreciate that. Thank you both for that very informative session, especially the topic of AI is so relevant right now. And we'll give people a chance to either raise their hand or throw questions in the chat. And in the meantime, I also have some other questions over here to get that discussion started. Especially, I wanted to touch on something that Adam brought up on, the online shopping, especially as we're getting closer to the holiday season. Those promo codes and discounts can be just so very enticing. But I would say almost 99% of the time they require an email address. So how would you suggest people go about that securely? Are segregated email accounts something that is ever suggested, or what would be the best way to stay protected? We're not always necessarily thinking twice when we get that 50% off right in front of our faces. So yeah, how could we stay safe?
So my recommendation for that is something I did a long time ago, which is I have a junk email where because Google will allow you to create as many Gmail accounts as you need. So especially during the holiday seasons, this will work in two folds. The first one is every holiday season, you can start getting 15 and 20% off for the first time again, because you'll generate a new email, especially if like I don't need to get, I don't Lululemon or Fabletics or something like that emails all the time, because they're going to just be asking you to, go back and shop more or whatever. So my recommendation for that, especially during the holiday seasons, is don't use your work email. And I know that is very cliche, but it certainly does, one, keep your email box relatively doable every morning. You're not getting vendor requests or whatever all the time. And the other thing too is it'll be harder for attackers to link up who you are on a personal level with who you are at an organization, because they're not going to there could be a million Adam Vosses in the world. So if I were to have some iterations that I change up all the time, they're not going to be able to say, oh, okay, that's the Adam Voss at the University of Cincinnati or something like that. So I would definitely recommend segregation. And I would also recommend just not using your work email, because that's going to start tying you to other places. The other thing too on the subject of that is, especially with the holiday seasons, be very mindful of UPS emails that are coming randomly. UPS doesn't ship Amazon packages. I know and this is just something you can tell your family, especially as our older loved ones are starting to explore the internet more. I would say let them know, if you get an email that your package can't be delivered or something like that, go to the actual application, right? So if I ordered it from Amazon, go to Amazon. Don't click on a link, because usually Amazon just tells you it was delivered or it's been shipped. Not that there are complications and you need to sign in and things like that.
Thank you. That's very, very good advice. We have some other questions here in the chat. I'll read some here from Michael asking, what are some password managers that you would recommend?
So my personal favorite is 1Password, which is on the internet, you'll search it with the number 1 and then password. I like the security around the individual devices that it gets attached to. So like, say somebody wanted to sign in as you, there is a multifaceted approach for how they could even begin to sign in to your 1Password from a remote area. It's not just as simple as like, oh, I'm going to down 1Password, I'm going to say I'm Adam today, right? Which really helps with that fear of this is a single point of failure. The other thing I like about multi-factor is how easily it integrates, stores passwords, and fills in, as well as the multi-factor approach too. So say you get something sent from, say, work, and they're like, hey, this has to have multi-factor attached to it as well. You can actually have 1Pass scan the QR code or the generated one, or the generated code that it gives you at first, and then give you your multi-factor logins as well too. So it'll be fill in the password, and then it'll also fill in your multi-factor for you too. So you won't even notice it's there, but it's also very secure, and it's end-to-end encrypted.
Thank you. Another question here on the chat is, what AI tools are recommended to use as a security tool? And another part of that question is, are there any trainings available for using AI security tools?
So AI security tools, I'd probably need maybe a little more granular example to answer that better, because I'm sure we're not talking about like ChatGPT or Bard. Within a lot of security vendors, like MDR and EDR and other defense tools, you're starting to see a lot of quote unquote AI being integrated to help, flag user responses. So it would really depend on like what type of security tool are you looking at, and what capacity are you looking to incorporate AI. I'm of the belief that AI is a very good thing, and it's also it can be a harmful thing. It might make us lazier, and it can definitely give you a false sense of hope, of knowledge of something that you search, especially when you're like writing code, right? It definitely does not write code perfectly the first time. You have to have an understanding of, what you're trying to do before you can tell it how to do something. So if there was maybe like a better use case for how you were looking to use it in security tools, I could probably answer that a little better than that ambiguous response I just gave. But there is, like, you can go to Udemy, and you can go to other skills training areas, and they'll give you the ins and outs on AI and harmfulness and how you can use it securely, things like that.
Thank you. I think that's a great mindset on AI in general. No extreme, right? It can be very useful. We just have to make sure we're using it correctly and securely, just as with most technology, right? So the audience can still throw in questions in the chat. I got another couple questions over here. Some people say that SMS MFA is not the most secure. What would you say to that? And do you have a preferred MFA method, whether it's authenticator apps, tokens, or any other way to do that multi-factor?
Yeah, SMS is certainly interesting, just due to the areas where you bring your phone all the time, so you don't generally know if I'm connected to a network, what my phone has been subjected to, what could be on it. Again, this is where I think password manager tools are awesome, because a lot of the time when you're trying to like log into something, you generally do it from your computer. Now, obviously our emails and stuff like that, we will do that from our phone, which are usually on some type of mobile device management. So there's already quite a few parameters around it that aren't as simple as like just logging in remotely. So my preferred would be, I would just go back to using some type of password tool, or something that generates a random code every 15 to 30 seconds, because you want to make sure that it isn't something that you can have for a long time. It needs to be like instantaneous, like in that moment for you to log in. That'll certainly help make it much tougher for adversaries to bypass MFA.
Thank you. Another question here is why, I believe at the beginning you shared there's about a 75% incidence of ransomware attacks succeeding in higher ed. Why is that number so high, and what would make a higher education institution attractive to, cyber criminals in the context of ransomware?
So the reason for higher ed is a couple different things. So resources always come into play here. Sometimes higher education's, University of Cincinnati's situation, you have a very big IT team. You can properly look at your security and segment off responsibilities and roles. There are some that are less fortunate in that regard too. So that would be the first problem, right? They're not adequately staffed, which means that you have multiple people doing multiple different roles, sometime in doing roles that they're not necessarily comfortable with, which can lead to a lot of misconfiguration issues and things like that as well. The other reason that attackers like going after higher ed is because student information is so valuable to them. Like I told you, I found out that I was part of a breach from going to school from software that we used at school, which was then later used against me for people trying to get into my Netflix account. What else? It was Netflix. They tried with one of my banks. They tried to log into my Gmail. And this was 3 or 4 years removed from school. So you're looking at future workforce. Then the next issue with that too can be for higher ed is oftentimes environments and security teams. So we've seen it where just the School of Business is its one IT team, and then the science and technology group is their own. And oftentimes they have a lot of misconfigurations around too. Short staff turnover leads to accounts that can be sitting within Active Directory that have laid dormant for a while that nobody knows about, that maybe have credentials that they can use to leverage to get to sensitive areas. So it's just a hot target for them because of a couple different reasons said there.
All right, thank you. That makes a lot of sense. I'm not seeing any other questions here in chat, but feel free to throw them in. In the meantime, I do have one more question for the TechGuard team. If anybody wants to learn more about TechGuard and the services solutions they offer, what would be the best way to reach out to you guys or to find out more about the company?
I can answer that. I can actually drop our website and then along with our email addresses in here. You could reach out specifically to us if you're interested in just high level services. You can reach out to me. We have Allie on the call today. She's an expert on our Shield security awareness training and phishing platform. So any questions regarding that, she would be able to assist you. And then obviously Adam's our technical resource. So if you want a deeper dive, you can reach out to him. But real quick, TechGuard, we're a woman-owned cybersecurity services firm. We've been around since 2000, spent a lot of the time in the DoD intelligence and federal government space, which is kind of cool. Ventured out in about 2007, I believe, and created a commercial side. So we offer preventative and proactive services. So anything from penetration testing to vulnerability assessments. We're huge on risk assessments right now. As well as incident response tabletop exercises. So we can drop our emails in the chat. And if you guys are interested, anyone interested in reaching out, go ahead and do that.
Thank you. Appreciate that, Nicole.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Right. So unless there's any more questions, which doesn't seem like they are. And again, the conversation around cybersecurity continues even beyond this session today. But I just want to thank the TechGuard team for the very valuable and informative session. And also thanks to our audience for attending today's event. We hope you found it valuable. This is just one of the many events we have lined up for the UC community this October. For more details, please visit uc.edu/infosec. The Cybersecurity Awareness Month page is linked right at the top, where you can learn more about things like the weekly trivia challenge, our cybersecurity meme contest, and interactive awareness table at TUC. That's next week. And we also have a shred event on the 24th to securely dispose of your documents. Recording of today's event will also be made available on our page as well as our YouTube channel. And please look out for a survey to make sure to complete it to be entered in a raffle for a chance to win some swag. And thank you once again for joining us. We look forward to seeing you at our future events. Have a great day, everyone.